Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report of today's show, presented by Manscaped. 4th of July is right around the corner, and I want to make sure that your bald eagle is flying great. 20% off at manscaped.com. Make sure that you use code Raiders. The link's going to be available for all y'all down in the comments and in the description of today's show. So coming up here on the Raiders Report, I got 9 players who made the Raiders' 53-man roster last year that simply will not make it this upcoming season, which I actually think is a good thing. Why? It means that this Raiders roster is getting better. And then the very, very end of the show, I'm going to show you some Raiders roster bubble candidates that almost made this list. Let's go to the very first player here, and it's Brandon Bolden. For the love of God, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, if you keep Brandon Bolden, I am going to go insane. Why? It simply does not make sense to keep your 5th or 6th running back, the back that was by far your worst back last season. And if you keep him, I want to know why. Because you can cut him and save $2.23 million. Sure, you're going to eat $625. I don't really care. If he wasn't a McDaniels guy, if he didn't have previous ties with the old New England regime, I mean, this would be just so obvious. But then again, you never know what this organization is going to do. Is he a good special teams player? Yes. Is he a good locker room player? Sure is. But at the end of the day, we have to make smart financial decisions for this team. And I know that you can use that money, whether it be for Jacobs, whether it be to go out and add a veteran on the defensive side of the football. You can use that 2.23 and go out and add a veteran on defense that is going to make a much bigger impact on overall wins and losses than Brandon Bolden would make on this team. We got plenty of more names coming up here on the Raiders Report, but if you're looking for more analysis, the latest news, rumors, for the low price of $3.99, you can subscribe to the Raiders Report. And if you're like, man, that's just way too much money after a week, unsubscribe. It's not going to cost you anything. Turn on the notifications, hit that sub button, join the Raiders Report family. Let's go to the next Raiders cut candidate here that made the roster last year. It's DJ Turner, and he played in 9 games last season. And realistically, his main value on this roster is special teams. Punt returner, kick returner. He's a little bit of a gadget player. But if you cut him, you save $870K. Like, when you see a lot of the moves that this Raiders team already made with the Trey Tucker, DeAndre Carter. Like, if we're talking about moving on from Hunter Renfrow, DJ, he's got almost no shot of making this roster. The wide receiver position group is arguably the deepest position that the Silver and Black have. Not a single reception last year. 4 carries for 26 yards. I mean, the Raiders would have to keep 11 receivers in order for him to even have somewhat of a shot. Undersized player. I wish him the best of luck. I hope he finds himself on a practice squad, but it simply doesn't make sense to keep DJ Turner. Now, here's the number one question from today's show, and I'm going to be listing off players left and right, but this is going to be the pinned comment on today's Raiders Report episode. I want you to name a player that made the Raiders roster last year. In terms of made the roster, I'm talking 53-man that will not make it this season. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break, so scroll on down and let me know. Let's go to the next name here on my list. It's Jesper Horsted. And he played in 15 games last season. And right now, Horstead is going to be battling with O.J. Howard for that tight end 3 role. The problem is Horstead is built more like a receiver. And as I mentioned here with Turner, the Raiders are set at the wide receiver position. I want a tight end 3 that can block. Howard is a better blocker than Horstead. And if you end up cutting him, you're going to save $1.1 million and you're going to eat only $30K. Last season with the Silver and Black, in those 15 games, he had 3 catches, 19 yards, and mainly was a active player because of all the injuries that Darren Waller had. But we just got to be able to face the facts. He is your 3rd best receiving option at tight end, which I might actually make the argument he might be a better receiving option than OJ. However, the Raiders offense needs to click in the red zone. I'm going to take Howard's red zone ability over Horstead's every single day of the week, which is why he doesn't end up making it this year. Let's go to the defensive side of the football now. We got Matthew Butler, who was drafted in the 5th round last season by McDaniels and Ziegler. He played in 6 games as a rookie and was a healthy scratch multiple times. This offseason, whether it be OTAs, whether it be mandatory minicamp, he was working with the 2nd and 3rd string defense. We have talked about on this show how we were told that the Raiders regret drafting him, that they don't love his work ethic, which sounds like he's putting in work a little bit more, but if you can save $870K by moving on from him, you should probably end up doing that. The Raiders drafted Nesta Jade Silvera. They drafted Byron Young. They have Adam Butler, who's been working with the first team. Like, this team on the defensive line, it's going to be super competitive, and nobody's job is safe. Like, literally nobody's job is safe, minus Bilal Nichols. It sounds like Nichols is the number 1 defensive tackle, and then everything else is, well, up for grabs. Do I want Matthew Butler to make this team? If he earns it, sure. But the problem is, he might be the 7th or 8th defensive tackle on this roster, and I really truly believe the Silver and Black only end up keeping 5, maybe 6 defensive tackles on this list. Now, Matthew Butler might come up here a little bit short, but guess what? I don't want you to come up short. Shave that George W. because every inch counts, and from what I understand, it makes it look bigger as well. So 20% off from our proud sponsor, Manscaped. Make sure that you use promo code Raiders. And again, this link's going to be available for you all down in the comments and in the description of today's show. My favorite tool, especially during the summertime, is the Lawnmower 4.0. If I'm going to be outside in the hot summer heat, I don't want my balls to be all sweaty down there. So what do? I get rid of my George W. I make sure that my bald eagle is flying high. And right now with Manscaped, it is smooth sack summer. Say that with me. Smooth sack summer. Use code Raiders. Get your hands on the perfect package. If it's going to be hot as balls out there, use some of the ball toner. Use some of the ball deodorant. If you're putting deodorant underneath your arms, you should put it on your balls too. Do you wear cologne when you go out to eat? When you go hang out with your significant other? When you go to work? If your answer is yes, why don't you put something down there to make it smell better? With the 4th of July, there's going to be a lot of fireworks. There's going to be a lot of banging going on. And if you get lucky enough to be banging too, I want you to be prepared. So, one more time, use code Raiders for the best male grooming products out there at manscaped.com. I don't want you to be the guy on the 4th of July that didn't get lucky and you're sitting in your car just reading the map. You don't want to do that. Shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring the show. Let's go to the next name here on our list, and it's Malcolm Koonce. Selected in round 3 of the 2021 NFL Draft out of Buffalo, and unfortunately for him, he's been in a very unfortunate situation with different head coaches. I don't think he's gotten a fair shot, but a lot of times it doesn't really matter. He's going to find himself on another NFL roster, and he'll get an opportunity when he does end up getting cut. The Raiders are going to save $1.1 million. You're going to eat only $249K. This one just simply comes down to he's not a McDaniels, and he's not a Ziegler guy. Does he have talent? Yes, he does. He's better off being like a third down, pin your ears back it after the quarterback because he's really bad against the run and has struggled a little bit on special teams, but the statistics lie to you a little bit because of the phantom holding call that was called against the Chiefs back in Week 5 last season. But the Raiders are going to keep 4, potentially 5 defensive ends, and Koonce is arguably one of the bottom guys here on this roster. Now, you're going to keep Crosby. You're going to keep Chandler Jones. Jordan Willis, I do think, ends up making it. And then you got Adam Plant Jr. Like, Tyree Wilson's going to make it. It's going to be very intriguing to see what this Raiders organization does at defensive end. Let's go to linebacker now. It's Darian Butler. And this one was a difficult situation for me because he played 15 games last season. He went to the College of Arizona State, has the connections with Raiders linebacker coach Antonio Pierce, and it sounds by all accounts that he's had a good offseason. However, go through, do your Raiders 53-man, and tell me where Butler fits, because linebacker is a very intriguing position. They're going to keep Robert Spillane. You know that they're going to end up keeping Divine Diablo, who's wearing the green dot. They're going to keep Amari Burney, who they drafted in the 6th round. So for Butler, I get the fact that he has ties. I just look at him as being a good practice squad type of player. The Raiders are also very, very high on Thomas, the UDFA from North Carolina State. They also kept Luke Masterson last season, who was a UDFA. This roster can go in a lot of different directions, and unfortunately, I think them keeping a middle linebacker who doesn't offer a lot in coverage is why he ends up getting cut. Let's go to another name here. It's Roderic Teamer, safety. He played in all 17 games last season for the Silver Black, and he even started in 3 of them. And Teamer's main value is on special teams, but a lot of the reasons what I just said about Butler, it's tough to keep all of these players on this roster again. The one thing that will be interesting to see is the money saved compared to the money cut, right? Where this team doesn't want to acquire a lot of dead money. They already have over $30 million this year in dead money because of all the bad contracts that Gruden and Mayock decided to shell out, and they don't want to continue to go with the dead money hit. If the Raiders want somebody who is the best special teams option in terms of their safeties, then they're going to keep Teamer. Teamer is a better special teams player than Pola-Mao, and he's a better special teams player than Jaquan Johnson. But Marcus Epps, locked to make it. Trevon Merrick, locked to make it. Chris Smith, who they ended up drafting in the 5th round out of Georgia this year, he's a lock to make it. What's really intriguing, though, is between Pola-Mao, Roderic Teamer, and Jaquan Johnson. There's going to be a battle for all of those spots, and I don't think Teamer ends up making the list. Now, out of the last 2 players that we just discussed, which both have the exact reasons why they would and why they would not make the roster. Both players can play special teams. Both have a player that was drafted in the 6th round and the 5th round. So, what do you think? Who's got the better chance to make it? If you think it's Darian Butler type DB, if you think it's Roderic Teamer type RT, out of these 2 players here, I do think Teamer has the better shot than Butler on making this roster. Now, we still got more names coming up here on the Raiders Report presented by Manscaped. But hey, Chat Sports is going to be live for the NBA Draft. Last season, 783,000 people watched our NBA Draft coverage. I think we're going to get to 1 million this year because of this man right here, Victor Wembanyama. So make sure you subscribe to Chat Sports YouTube channel. We got over 340,000 people over there. You're going to get the picks before you see them on TV. Make sure you're subscribed for the NBA Draft that goes live Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's go to the next name here on my list. It's Amik Robertson. The Raiders have been linked to multiple veteran corners out there, and whether they sign a veteran corner or not, Amik's not going to make it, and it's the exact reasons why I talked about with Malcolm Koonce. Unfortunately for him, wrong place, wrong time, and he's had to learn 3 different defenses in 4 years. Like, that's a tough thing. Amik is also the only player still in this Raiders roster from the 2020 draft, which is a mind-blowing thing to say out loud. But he had to learn a Paul Gunther defense. He had to learn a Gus Bradley defense. He had to learn a Patrick Graham defense. Plus, he's doing it throughout COVID in 2020. I want Amik to land on a practice squad. I want somebody to give Robertson the chance that he deserves because he is a good young player. He is. And I think in spurts last season, he showed you that. And he showed that he can be a dog. But the Raiders are going to go with a different type of corner. They want more press man. And not that Amik can't do that, but they want more players who are not afraid to get up in your face and hit you a little bit and be physical, which is not exactly what Robertson is best at. On top of that, he's on the bottom of the roster right now. Whether you like to hear it or not, that's just the way that this thing goes. We got some more new subs in the month of June. We continue to do pretty damn well on our Chat Sports subscriber battle. Shout out to all of y'all that did hit that sub button this month for helping the Raiders Report remain number 1 in our battle. Well, we got Jay Sean, Rich, Gav, Douglas, and Rich. Huge shout out to all of y'all. And if you haven't already subscribed, hey, hit that subscribe button. You could see your name here on the Raiders Report. Let's go to the final name, I believe, on my list. It's Sam Webb. Played in all 17 games last season and started in 3. And if the Raiders are predicted to sign a corner, it just makes it difficult because I see this team keeping 6 cornerbacks. Webb is the 7th player that I have in my 53-man roster projection. Is he a favorite of the coaching staff? No doubt. Is he going to make the practice squad? No doubt. But Sam Webb is a very fun and intriguing player that made the roster last year because, let's face it, the Raiders just didn't have a lot of depth at corner. This season, they have a lot more depth, and they have a certain trajectory that they're going to continue to look at and go forward. So for Webb, 36 tackles, 3 PBUs. Unfortunately for him, I don't see him making this Raiders 53-man roster. So here are the 9 players that made the team last season that will not make it this upcoming year. Brandon Bolden, DJ Turner, Jesper Horsted, 3 players on the offensive side of the football. Matthew Butler, Malcolm Koonce, Darien Butler, Roderic Teamer, Amik Robertson, and Sam Webb on the defensive side of the football. If you've thrown out a certain name, because let's do it right now, who did I leave off the list? Yes or no? Did I leave anybody off? Right now, looking at the live viewers, a lot of people are saying Keelan Cole. Remember, Keelan Cole did not make the Raiders 53-man roster. He was added on a later date. So did I leave anybody off my list? Give me a yes, give me a no. The only players that I could make a legitimate argument for are these 3 names right here. You got Brittain Brown. I like Sincere McCormick more than Brown. However, I do think the coaching staff might go with Brown over McCormick. Luke Masterson, he is right there on the bubble. I can make an argument for why he would and why he wouldn't make it. And then Isaiah Pola-Mao. If you got beat reporters out there saying that he's not going to make it, that might indicate something. However, people who I talk to, they do sound pretty confident that he is going to end up making the roster because they want him to play that linebacker safety hybrid. Now, before we leave y'all today, friendly reminder, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, stay up to date on everything going on around the Raiders.